Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meetings, committee meetings of Bellingham City Council for December 11th. The first committee that will meet this morning or this afternoon is the Justice Committee. April Barker is the chair of that committee.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember President. We had two items for today's committee meeting, but the first has been canceled, presentation by the Office of the Civil Legal Aid. And my understanding, Brian, is that will come back to us in January?
Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office, correct. We are going to schedule them to give the presentation January 22nd.
Okay. And then the second item, again, I'm sorry, I'm joined with Councilmember Vargas and Borneman. And our second item is a discussion on draft resolution of guiding principles for justice and justice-related systems. We've had this conversation this will be our third committee meeting on developing guiding principles for justice and justice-related systems that would direct the mayor as she continues to work with our partners in the county, other systems and governments, as well as this committee, and potentially, if the council so wishes, guiding principles for the council as well. This was at the direction of this committee for me to go back and try to incorporate all of the changes. So I'm sure the committee members have had a chance to look at it. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
Well, I really appreciate all the work that went into it. I appreciate the changes and the thought that went into the changes. I think the way they're worded now better reflects the concept of principles. And so I would move that we recommend approval of this to the full council.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. I do have one suggested change that I'd like to throw across, but Pinky, why don't I go ahead and have you?
I'm just curious before we do this. Last week we had our chief of police here, and we discussed having the police kind of take a look at these principles, and I'm wondering if we've had an opportunity to do that before we adopt it. I just want to close that loop.
Chief Dahl, would you?
There's our chief right there.
Mm-hmm. Hi, Dave Dahl, police chief for the city. Yes, I have spent the morning reviewing the changes that were made in your principles, and I agree with Councilman Borneman. I appreciate the changes that were made. I think they're very thoughtful. I think that the wording that you have is wording that resonates with our strategic plan, and I agree with this.
Okay, the major feedback that I got was we could probably do some work on our whereases. I've never done one of these, so my whereas was pretty short and sweet. But with the third part was ensure victim harm reduction. There was a group that came to me and said, why not just say ensure harm reduction, because there's harm reduction on all sides of this. I reached out to, I'm trying to remember her last name, Susan with Domestic Violence Commission. Marks, thank you, and asked, if it just said ensure harm reduction, is that enough? Because I know victim harm reduction has specific wording for a reason, and she suggested she could see both sides of this, and that you want to try to ensure harm reduction for people who are coming into the system, as well as those that have been harmed by the people who might be coming into the system. And she had a suggestion of ensure victim and community harm reduction. And so if there's no opposition to that, I would move that we make that amendment to this. Okay. And I have to make a vote on that, right? So we have a motion to amend the document, and then we can go back to yours, Terry, to approve it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Brian, did the mayor have anything that she wanted you to share with us?
No, I believe many of the suggestions that are reflected in this document were made by her as well in consultation with you, April.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think we just offer administration support for the document as well.
Okay. Yeah, I did want to acknowledge council staff, various community members who helped work on this, as well as the mayor and her staff, to really try to get it down simple, but still have all of those things incorporated as we move forward to discuss these things. I'm happy with the document, but I've been working on it for quite a while. I think in a moment I'll bring a vote for Terry's motion, but I wonder anybody else sitting has any. Michael?
I appreciate the kind of high focus of this. I think that'll be useful. I think that this document, along with a resolution that we adopted a year and a half or so ago, that refers more specifically to the criminal justice and the jail aspect, that both those be very useful documents to, in a sense, carry with us to the stakeholder group that we've asked the mayor to form to deal with the more immediate issues of jail planning. But I like the fact that this goes beyond jail planning. I think all along we wanted to move beyond jail, and this does so.
Terry?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for putting in the information on trauma-informed, because I really think those words, a lot of people have no idea what that means, and so I think it's good that you had this in here anyway.
Yeah,
to
I appreciate you
explain.
asking for that, because it is, I think, a great opportunity for people to be educated on what trauma-informed is. Councilmember Hamel?
I just want to let you know I'm supporting the retention of the word victim in terms of victim reduction or victim harm reduction. I think that so often on the task force we talk a lot about changes within the system. Our focus is on people who have offended or are pre-trial and alleged to have committed the crime, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about victim harm reduction. So I think elevating that and retaining that's important. So I'll be supporting it tonight.
Awesome. Okay, I think with that, there's a motion on the table to accept the guiding principles for justice and justice-related decisions. Now, the motion is to accept it as for this committee, so we can start with that, and then we can decide where we want to go with it from there. So for this committee, and with an amendment that number 3 would say ensure victim and community harm reduction. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, and so is this something that you all would like to bring forward to the council? I'm assuming so.
Well, I think part of my motion was to bring this,
I'm sorry,
was to
Terry.
bring it forward, to recommend approval to the full council.
Okay,
So, yeah.
so do I have to restate that motion? Okay, you got it, Marie. Thank you. So I guess with that, we could, we have quite a bit of time. I don't know if there's anything that the committee wanted to entertain as far as next steps for next year. I know we're looking at having this agenda item, the one that we didn't have today, come forward. Is there any direction that you all want to give, or do you want me just to continue, or whoever ends up chairing the committee? Pinky?
Maybe we could talk a little bit about actually the committee itself for the planning for next year. I know when we first started, we had asked for an hour. That may not be necessary going forward, depending on what information that we have, because we got through a lot, and I'm really impressed that we did so much so far. But and then also if the time and like Monday morning or a morning, afternoon, those kinds of things, and I guess that's going to matter who's going to be on the committee. Or
Okay. Terry?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Pinky on the thing, on the time. I think there was some good, we explored a lot of basic concepts this time, and we've gone through that. So I do think as we go forward, it should unless other major issues come up that we feel we really have to address, that this should run like other committees. As issues come up, we bring it comes to the forward, and we have a regular meeting, and we decide the time based on that, rather than feeling that we have to have a meeting of this and fill it with some ideas that we want, you know, that we focus on those emerging issues and things we need to deal with. Because I think we did a good job of educating now. Now we attend to the issues as they emerge from the justice system and regarding that. That would be my input.
One of the things that we had the Vera report, and then that went quite a ways. We had some time to ask questions, but we really haven't taken time to unpack those recommendations. I know some of them are things that we have control over, some of them are not. Would you all be interested in a meeting around that with staff to look over the recommendations and invite the judge forward to see if there's anything we want to move forward on or explore further? Does that seem okay for a future meeting?
I'd like to do the Vera Institute, but I'd also like to a little bit further break down on grace and talk about how we're overlapping, what our responsibilities are as the city, and kind of maybe examine both of those a little bit further. And then also in regards to moving forward on what we're going to do with the jail, et cetera, I think that that should be a bit of a priority focus at the beginning of the year.
Okay, great. Michael?
I think it would be good to talk about the Fair Institute and the Phase 3 report of the Incarceration Reduction Prevention Task Force report is similar but different. That's worth considering. And I would say, actually, it might be nice to identify things which are not in our control, but which are in the control of the county that we could, if we have a clear enough opinion on this, make a request. So, for example, bail practices and also trial calendaring and failure to appear practices are some of the areas that have been identified where the county could do the most improvement, at least by some parties think so and some reports think so. If we think so, it might be nice to actually see if we agree and then officially deliver that request over to the council, the county council. I'm not saying that we are all of the same mind yet, but that's something I'm interested in, making sure that we advocate for rather than remaining silent. I think we've seen our county partners sometimes are surprised that we had a certain point of view because we didn't say it clearly when we thought it was clear, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So I think, especially with the Vera, maybe to have updates on Grace and where we're at with that, and then the Phase 3, of course, of the Incarceration Reduction Task Force. Those first couple meetings might be more like an hour, just so that whoever's looking at being on the Justice Committee will understand. And if we do our meetings, that likely, depending on the council president, I know this year they tended to want them to be more in the morning. So just have that out there for people that are considering the Justice Committee for the beginning of the year. But I guess with that, everybody said their piece. Anything from you, Chief? Okay, and the committee.